Okay, I think we'll get started. Everyone can turn their cameras on for the panelist. Well, it's great to see everybody today. We're really excited about this presentation, being that a lot of people have been talking about 4K for a good while, and we're excited to hear what FORA did down in Miami, and for an all 12G SDI facility. So I'm going to introduce Adam, Director of Sales for FORA, and you're just north of Miami, right, Adam?
Yes, just north of Miami, about a half hour.
So you can introduce the rest of your team. Thank you for putting this together for us.
Thanks, Bob, and we'd like to thank all the SMPTE members that are joining us today for this opportunity to speak with you. First, I'm pleased to introduce Bob Peterson, our product specialist, and our new president and CEO as of April 1st, Satoshi Kimura. Take it away, Satoshi.
All right, thank you very much, Adam. So everybody can see my PowerPoint right now? Great. So let me start. So first of all, let me introduce myself, Satoshi Kanemura. I'm president of FORA America since April this year, meaning I'm just 3 years old still. And before that, I spent 35 years in Sony. And during the Sony days, doing 24p or 1080p, 4K, 8K, IP crowd, a lot of things we do. But one of the very much memorable stuff for me during the Sony is that with my uncle George Lucas to make a first movie for the episode 2, and my friend James Cameron to make Avatar 1, but not only that, Avatar 2 and 3 is doing with the camera with Sony. That's a good memory. But so we tried to change the world, and I really would like to change the world even at the FOA. Then today, I'm very, very happy to introduce another guy who a big fan of movie, who is Dan Slentz from the New World Symphony. Dan, can you say hello to everybody?
Hi, Satoshi-san. It's good to see you.
Oh, nice microphone you have.
Oh, thanks. It's not a Sony.
All right, he is the chief video engineer of a New World Symphony, and then believe it or not, he started this job even from 14 years old. Can you believe that? He's a legend. And then I know nobody believe it. So look at this. This is a real picture of Dan Slentz with 14 years guy and have a studio camera. How many people recognize what the hell this studio camera is? Maybe you guys over 50, I guess. But anyway, this is a proof. He is a legend of engineer. After that, oh, by the way, that I even found some picture from WOUB on the 1983. And after that, he spent a lot of time on the TV station, radio station, all sort of stuff. And now he is Mr. 12G, who is the first, I think, in the history in the US implement 4K 12G system. Thank you very much, Dan, to join today.
Thank you.
And one thing unfortunate is currently New World Symphony is under renovations towards the September semester. And then great system 4K 12G, Dan decided to implement more and more 4K 12G stuff and gears and renovate at the moment. So it's I'm sorry to say, a little bit mess to go into the site tour. So thanks to Dan, he made a video for us. It's about 9 minutes, a little bit long, but a lot of information in it. So we're gonna soon play the video. So everybody, please prepare the note and take a note of what he's talking about 4K 12G is a key point. After the video, I'm gonna test you. So don't miss the video, don't miss the key point of the video. You ready? All right, Bob Baker, would you play the video for me to everybody?
I'm Dan Slentz. I'm the Chief Video Engineer for New World Symphony on Miami Beach. New World Symphony is a high-end academy on Miami Beach in Florida. It's a educational institution, post-secondary. It's people with masters, doctorates, bachelors, and we have a lot of well-known performers who show up here that mentor the fellows. We have a CEO that pushes technology to the envelope, and we use Ravenna audio systems. We use the latest lighting. And with video a few years ago, he said he really wanted us to be cutting edge. And a few years ago, that was really difficult to do 12G and UHD at the same time. So we started researching and developing the whole system about 3 years ago, which included a trip to Tokyo to visit FORA and also some of the big broadcasters to see how they were incorporating both 4K UHD and 8K as well. When we initially started this, it was only possible to do it in quad link, and doing 2SI or SQD is not a good solution, so we kind of had to wait for 12G. The biggest issue we found is that 12G in router size and 12G and even switcher size was really compromised by a lot of the manufacturers who said, yeah, you just reduce your inputs by 75% and you're good to go, and that wasn't going to work. So I actually, through a pretty good dealer, found that FORA had a big 12G solution, and that's what took us into FORA. So as you look at the rack, you're going to see a lot of the FORA equipment because they were really like the leading edge, the cutting edge for 12G technology. What we have here is a Hanabi 6000 FORA switcher, which is 64 by 48 inputs, 64 inputs, 48 outputs in 3MEFX. And then we also use the FORA 144 squared router, and we also use a FORA HD router for monitoring because it makes a lot of sense when you're reducing a UHD image to not commit 12G to just monitoring. And one of the things you see a lot of for us is the FORA 9600, which is truly a Swiss Army knife. It gives you enormous latitude on your color, where you can do enormous color correction and changes between different technology. And the reason that's important to us here is we use Hitachi's 4000 UHD studio cameras. We have a dozen of them. We're wired for 14, but we also use Panasonic's PTZ 150 cameras, which is another UHD camera, and we use a number of those. We sometimes use Sony's DSLR cameras, so getting color to be absolutely correct is critical. And when we can go through a FORA FA9600, we can do a lot of color correction to make sure everything matches. Now, a big concern for a facility that does audio production and live audio like we do is lip sync. And we typically may not see it if we come from a broadcast world, because lip sync to us is more of a Chinese movie concern. But in fact, when the conductor raises his hand, and not being a musician, I don't fully understand as the video engineer, but I also act as TD. It's absolutely critical that every swing, every movement is perfectly in sync and not delayed. When you're dealing, of course, with digital video, you have an inherent delay every time you run through a proc amp, every time you run through anything. So we have what a layman would call zero latency. In fact, we're dealing with a little bit of latency, but nothing that's ever noticeable. So that's kind of the overview of what we are and what we do. We also do immersive projection. We're using true RGB laser 40,000 lumen Christies. That's all part of what we do. And if you wonder, who sees this, where does it go? We actually have a 160 foot by 70 foot wall outside that we project 3 40,000 lumen 4K projectors on simultaneously with 160 speakers in what's called a constellation system. So it's a very technology driven facility. And that's how we wound up where we are. The trip to visit FORA, the trip to Tokyo, all helped us assemble this. The 12G is so critical that I hate to put it this way, but don't listen to what the manufacturers say for the distance on the cable. Always consider it much less than what it is. I mean, we've always worked off the 100-meter rule. Some of the cables, they'll say, yeah, 100 meters, definitely cut it shorter. My suggestion has always been, if you're doing 12G and you're going over 220 feet, go to fiber. Switch it to single mode fiber quickly. We are using SMPTE fiber connections on our cameras, things like that, which work no problem with 12G. It's just an amazing technology. You have the benefit of being able to run in P, so we're running at ultra high def at 5994p. You have high dynamic range, HDR ability. There's so much more you can do with this. What's interesting to point out is Our facility at this point now has been used for some national shows. We did Momento Latino for CBS, Funny or Die Productions. It was shot in New York and LA at major production facilities in high def. And they were concerned like, oh, well, how's this going to look? It's coming from a concert hall. But I honestly believe we blew the others out of the water. The quality was incredible. As most engineers know, when we first got into HD, we down converted a lot of HD to SD, and all of a sudden all of us are looking at this SD stuff that was shot in HD and going, God, it looks so much better. Why does it look better even though it's SD? Because we shot it in HD. Now what we're seeing is we did Susie Orman for PBS, a National Pledge special here, and the first thing they had to do is down convert everything so it could be broadcast on PBS. But what consistently came out of them was, oh my God, this ultra high def stuff looks phenomenal in HD. And it's like, yeah, you got more to work with. It really does pack a lot more punch visually, every aspect about it. Since it can't be an interactive event, I hope I could have answered any questions you have. If you talk to the people from FORA and ask questions, they can answer them, or they can ask me, and I'll be glad to talk to you about anything you want to know. Some of the experiences, some of the challenges. It was fun, it's exciting, it's cutting edge. At times it was bleeding edge, and we know what that means. But it works beautifully. It's a phenomenal system. And if you're ever down on Miami Beach, look us up. Come on in. We love to give tours. We love to show people what we have. We have 14 UHD studio broadcast cameras on telemetrics. Some of them we man, sometimes we run jibs, sometimes we run Steadicam. We have 6 Panasonic 150 PTZs we can stage around the hall. We have an additional 12 Panasonic PTZs throughout the facility. We have a secondary control room which actually shares one of the MEs from our Hanabi switcher, from our 4A switcher. So the flexibility and the latitude they far exceed anything that I've actually been able to do in the past with some of the other equipment. The question I was asked is, have we had any problems with the system? Yes, I can say we have had some problems with the system. It was a utility we used for quad conversion to 12G off of our Hitachi CCUs. It was much more cost effective than trying to retrofit the CCUs with a 12G output because they only had quad links, so we had to go with an external device. And every now and then, these dang external quad to 12G converters will completely lock up and just not output a signal. And it just happens now and then. We've had no issues with any of the 4A equipment. The latitude, the flexibility has been great, but this original design that I had started 3 years ago, and we had worked with Diversified and Enlightened Digital, I found that in the design, and part of this is my fault, lacked some of the flexibility that I think we really needed. So this summer we're also retrofitting and doing some modifications. So everything has been great. They've been a great partner. And some of the people we work with, like Christie, like Hitachi, and like 4A, we consider not a manufacturer that we buy stuff from. They're a partner. I mean, they're in here for the long haul, and their name is on everything we do. So it's an advantage to them to step up, but we've never had to push them to help us. So it's worked out really well.
All right, sorry, it's a little video is a little glitch because 4K 12G, I guess, but let me go to the PowerPoint back. Everybody see my PowerPoint back now? You can see PowerPoint, okay. So, Dan, by the way, thank you very much for the video. You know, he is used to be working for the radio station. He's talking pretty good, I think. And then hope everybody pick up the point he mentioned about during the video. What I pick is like this: cable, don't listen to the manufacturer, whatever is a little, touchy issue he talk about. Or size is the issue, router switcher for the size for the 12G. Well, he actually visited the actual usage, people who use the 12G to test it, or total system feasibility, not just a box-to-box issue, total system. Also, he mentioned about some good hybrid solution between 12G, not just 12G, but 3G together with. Well, audio sync, not only the lip sync, but the conductor tag or all other sync is an issue. And of course, he mentioned about at the beginning some issues there, but how he going to overcome those issues with partner, as he mentioned. And then one of the things, it's a good thing, maybe later I'm gonna ask Dan to more detail, but he said the gorgeous HD from 4K. It's much better than native HD. That's another gift about 12G and 4K. And again, tight partnership. It's system. It's a new cutting edge system. It's not just a Lego puzzle, easy to make it happen. You need to talk to have a good partner to build up the system. These are the things I pick up the keyword from Dan presentation. But the last one he mentioned is the most important one is come to Miami. I think he's happy to show you the system. Once September semester gonna start, I think happy. Yeah, he said some out. Gonna tour, maybe $2 per person. I don't know. Maybe you have to ask them, but he happy to show all the system anyway.
Absolutely.
So, great, Dan. So let me go through the key point which Dan mentioned about. First of all, it's just a cable, but it's still very important part of the system. And I think it is needless to say for all the SMPTE member, but as you know of the SDI characteristic, you don't need to worry.
Hey, Dan, are you there? Adam, you there?
Yes, it looks like Satoshi-san's net
Yeah,
dropped
he
down.
froze.
I can pick up a little bit to add where Satoshi was.
Okay.
The no need to worry about the characteristics of the SDI. I can throw in something that was an interesting thing that I can mention right now, is we found working in 12G SDI, we had some original 3G cabling that was left over from the original install. And believe it or not, we do believe we lost signal integrity on the HD from basically an RF radiation coming out of the 12G. I mean, it was so minimal. We used very good Kinect cable on the 12G, but it was the old, less expensive 10-year-old cable that seemed to be picking it up like a receiving antenna. And the HD signal, we lost all signal integrity. So we switched out the HD cabling as well. That was one thing that I did want to mention. And I thought it was worth mentioning to people, because at 12G, as the manufacturers, all the manufacturers have told me during my research, you're actually now working in microwave frequencies when the signal, and that's why the traces on the routers are no longer square. They have to be curved because it's a race car and a racetrack. So hopefully that extra information helped. Adam, did you want to throw in anything? I think without Satoshi here, until he's able to get back on, I think we can keep it going. I've done a couple of these before, and this does happen.
Oh yes, yes. This is the beautiful part of our new world, I guess. That's why I can't wait to get back on the road where I can actually meet folks face to face. But regardless of that, there is a lot more complication working with the 12G signal than your traditional 3G. There are some more challenges, but one of the things that Satoshi-san here will talk about is the length of 4 years of our experience in actual Japanese television stations has taught us a lot. So I think we're the strongest knowledge base on the 12G in broadcast at this time.
I would agree. Satoshi-san, if you can hear me, you dropped out during the presentation, and Bob brought us all back together, and we waited for you to log in. You were muted a second ago, so if your microphone is muted, you may want to mute that. There we go. Can't hear you yet.
Yep.
There we go. And down again. There we go, back again.
Are you here now?
Perfect.
From which page I think I missed?
You were on the page that you talked about no problems. The one thing I did throw in is we had some old original 10-year-old 3G SDI cable from our first install, and we do believe it worked as an antenna to the 12G. The 12G cable is very good, but we lost signal integrity on the 3G, and it was actually the FORA engineers that came over to help us with the install that said, you know, we really believe this is what's happening. So that was one of the things we did find, is to be very careful with old cabling that may be existing because, as I mentioned to the SMPTE members, that 12G is actually working now in such a frequency range that it's almost a microwave frequency. It's almost got an RF characteristic to it. So I'll let you go back to your presentation, let you know where we were at.
Thank you very much for that backing up. He's right. That's what I want to say. But anyway, one is the cable length. You have to be careful, but also you can see some materials of cable like triple sealed. That's another one. But as long as you check the cable length, connector is also the issue. That's for the specified connector for the 12G, but even jack or patch panel as well. Some people say that the 12G qualified jack or patch panel gonna be very expensive, but you better be careful. It's not that just a trade-off. You think cable length shouldn't be an issue, but other issue gonna be remain as a connector or patch panel. So you better be really sure from the scratch to build the system as a 12G.
One thing I can throw in that helps with this is I basically threw out all 3G to avoid that. I did color code some things that were still 3G versus my 12G, so I use a color code. But even a barrel, something as simple as a barrel, which we all try not to use, can be absolutely detrimental to a 12G signal to throw a 3G barrel in. They fit, they look the same, but actually I've noticed a dielectric difference and also center pin difference. So you definitely don't want to mix and match 3G and 12G ever. Just go with one. And even our patch bays, to future proof, we didn't do 3G patch bays at all. Even when we were doing HD, we switched the whole thing over to 12G to future proof.
Thank you very much, Dan. Please stay. Please jump in anytime, okay, please.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Sure. And then this is just a normal stuff. Everybody think everybody knew it, but you better be careful even for the cabling. Like a famous 90 degrees turn, it's gonna be, you're gonna lose all of the length of the cable. So I hope not, you're gonna be like this. You better be really careful. Okay, go ahead, Dan.
Satoshi-san, one of the things one of the engineers from FORA had described 12G, which was helpful to me, is now we're dealing with an Indianapolis race car. We are dealing with the fastest signal, biggest bandwidth. So everything must be treated as if it were a race car, and a prime race car, and very long sweeps whenever possible. Oh my gosh, never kink a cable, anything like that. If you inadvertently crush a cable, step on it, get rid of it. The signal requires such integrity that you can never allow the physical characteristics of a cable to be altered in any way. It's not hard to do, and it sounds scary, and I don't want to scare people away from 12G because I really do think it's a fabulous way to treat video and to work with video. We had, with it, which is worth mentioning, we had seriously considered 4K IP and all the different other possibilities. And truly, when it came down to it with the Symphony, this means something. I mean, not being a musician, to me, I'm just waving my hand, but to the performers, this motion is different than this motion, that little difference. And I could not, with the old system we had, which was a 3G system, but with a lot of inherent latency because there was no consideration put into that system. I couldn't run a HD SDI monitor backstage, and the performers would never accept it. I was still doing analog to give them a monitor, but now on this 12G, which normally has more latency, they actually can work with it. I have designed a system for the San Francisco Symphony and now the Cleveland Symphony Orchestra, and they're both now San Francisco is using theirs. Cleveland is being ready to be built. So it's this 12G and ultra high def is really catching on. People see the beauty of the picture. It's just enormous. It's incredible to see how different it looks and is.
Great. Thank you very much, Dan. So his lesson is don't go this way. So cable is just a cable, but pretty much important. We better be very much careful. The next topic is famous this chart. Everybody familiar with eye pattern chart of the jitter. So no matter what, how we did the cable, everything, but of course output jitter or inconsistent impedance or amplitude during the transmission, that's gonna affect some jitters, noise, all the stuff. And then not only the jitter from the outside, because jitter are going to be accumulate if you go the process of some products and on and on and on. So those are the things also we have to really be considered. So our recommendation is by yourself or ask manufacturer if they do process doing a severe stress test by using a pathological test signal, the famous this pink and gray kind of signal. I think SMPTE member already familiar with this signal, but upside of the pink data going to be a test for the equalizer operations. So sending all the 19 0, then suddenly 1 is coming to check of the equalizer operation. It's a really tough test, and we have to go through it. That we have to do. The bottom side of the dark part is like a phase lock loop performance. Now, not 0 1 0 1, all zeros and all 1 type of signal to go through it. It is a really severe test, which manufacturer doesn't want to do this. But for the 12G, for sure, these are the tests we better go through it, and then you better talk to manufacturer if that your products is already past this kind of test. And then another lesson from Dan is some people say like a 2SI is perfect, digital, everything going well. So it shouldn't be a pathological test signal issue, but it's a little bit different. 2SI is just a mapping methodology of the 2 signal as a redundant or even 1 signal gone. You have still signal gonna be okay. So it's a mapping technology. It's not a bitrate issue. So always bitrate is an issue for the such jitter or noise. So we really have to go through no matter cable or fiber, and we have to go through this severe test to see the jitter, the volume of the jitter. Dan, you ready to talk something, or may I go through yet?
No, I'm just enjoying what you're saying. It brings back some memories for me. I can say this about the bandwidth, which matters a lot for acquisition and storage. Our storage system, when we did the math to figure out what we needed, our storage system for all of this is a Spicer. It's a Rode Schwartz, which is worth mentioning because it was a lot of research to find one that worked, and it is actually 2 petabytes of storage, all in about 22 RU. So it's capable of growing to about 6, which at 6 petabytes will give us, for our needs, about 6 years of storage. And then we still have to find some place to put it after that.
Wow, great. And then all the tools is available, like waveform monitor. There is a section called, Y and C CRC error. They can check, and then they're going to alarm on the error gonna happening. So you better use those waveform or all the tool to find out if CRC error gonna there. I'm gonna talk to you later again, but the alarm is important. But you better be careful handling alarm versus replace of the cross point or whatever. Sometimes some people just start the tape deck that the initial stage is going to give you some wrong information that's going to alarm, but soon to be it's going to be normalized. So don't change the cross point on that. So you have to understand what's happening there and correctly judge of such error anyway. And then this is typical eye pattern. Everybody knew that. So look at that, eye chart, and then specify what the 12G characteristic and then judge what's going on by using this eye chart, like 20 to 80% rise time or jitters or noise. And then everybody knew that this area is gonna about jitter you can judge or noise. And based on specification everybody has, like in case of 12G is a rise fall time difference is even less than 18 picoseconds. It's gonna be very severe. And then you can see some, 75 ohms cable length below, but actually I forgot to mention that, like Belden didn't recommend this cable. He put the 70, but he recommends that the more 12G specific cable to use it, or so such very sensitive. So having those stuff, and we really have to think about jitter from outside, or some accumulating loop or whatever of the system products that we really have to do. And then thank you very, very much for Dan's brave enough to introduce our products at the beginning. I think it's from 4 years ago. So this is really the world first 4K 12G system to test on it. And then frankly, as he mentioned at the beginning, we have some issue we have to overcome. So we do tuning all the input of the router or everything, but we learn a lot. So now we try to implement some functionality we call jitter cleaner functions for input and output. Of course, as long as you did design for the system completely, like a cable length or connector or everything, but it's difficult to eliminate 100% of the jitter from the outside. Some people gonna patch to some strange cable or whatever. It may happen. So jitter may come to the product, but as long as products gonna detect the jitter and clean up to the outside, then next product's gonna get the clean video, then no accumulation of the jitter afterwards. So we try, our product's going to be the good gateway of potential jitter coming into the system or whatever. So that's function going to be one of the key. And then many manufacturers gonna propose different option, I think. So that's your choice. You're gonna really have to talk to your manufacturer or integrator or partner, what is the best suitable way to doing things. And again, it's inevitable. Sometimes some strange signal is coming. So we're trying to apply some error detection function on the input. So something strange is coming. As you can see, some warning come up even from the web GUI. So easy to see what's going on there. And again, one of the lessons we learned is don't automatically switch the cross point if you find something wrong or the warning. As I said, sometimes they just patch the cable suddenly. So initial stage something happening, but it's going to be normalized and no problem, or like a pre-roll of the tape or some other reason there. So the purpose of this to understand what's happening in which input, then understand what's going on. The input is a tape deck or cable is lost or something very strange happening. And based on that, you better take some actions. So that's our recommendations. Again, many manufacturers, many integrators prepare all the stuff to prevent such error or jitter or everything. So I really would like all of you to talk to, as Dan mentioned, like a kind of partner type of the people to really prepare for the systems. Okay. And this is a system diagram. It's a little bit detailed, so I'm not gonna go into each system on it. But the key point is, as Dan mentioned, Dan has a lots 4K capable camera, and I think it's gonna be increasing. And not only the traditional studio camera, nowadays PTZ camera, or I think he even mentioned about DSLR camera. So it's more affordable range of the camera is ready. So it's, I think, easy for you to build up the 12G system as well. So input side of the camera, a lot of range of the 4K available, still quad maybe, but it's becoming 12G single output camera gonna be ready now. So much easier, which Dan experienced at the beginning of some quad to the single converter issues or all those stuff. But I think many manufacturers come up with single link products at good price range. And then later I'm going to talk about, but I think the two key points of this system diagram, or maybe three. One is, as he mentions, this is 4K 12G complete system, but he preferred to have hybrid operation with 3G because, like a multi-view, nobody needs 4K 12G picture on that small 9-inch monitor, whatever, or versus versa. So depend on output or applications, it's better to have a good combination of 3G or HD or SD or 4K, good hybrid operation. That's one thing. The other one is processing power. He mentioned that 4K has a beautiful color, even HDR is coming, and then a lot of projector or LED, many devices who has other color matrix. So sometimes you need a good color corrections or HDR or SDR conversions or frame syncs, all conversion gonna be needed. So he has a bunch of processor to deal with that. That's another key point. The third one is still same as a conventional system. If you make this kind of system, you need to have a tally information or source name display. So how you're gonna design is easy to communicate back and forth with router, switcher, multi-viewer, all the control, same tally information, same source name display, easy to access to it. That system capability is one of the issue. So I just pick up the Signal Pro. So all the 4K signal going to the router, 144 by 144, and going to the switcher. But at the same time, from the switcher across point go to the 3G router, and then necessary video going to be the multi-viewer for that's just a 3G video to playback. But also we're gonna maintain 12G 4K beautiful picture from the output. I'm sorry, Dan, you're gonna.
No, that's one thing I can point out about this diagram that may not be apparent, just obvious right off the bat, is that the Hanabi switcher has a lot of down conversion built into the aux ports. And so what the diagram isn't really showing, but it is reflecting, is that a lot of the 12G or UHD signals have no option for HD. And that would be like a Panasonic PTZ 150 is just a 12G camera, where the Hitachi Broadcast 4000s have 12G, well, not 12G in our case, but quad link, and that's where we're using a third-party converter. And in their case, they have both 3G and 12G, so we're able to route the 3G into the 3G router direct. But in the cases where some of the items don't have a secondary HD monitoring output, we're actually using the HVS 6000 and some of the aux outs as just dedicated down converters. And that's what your diagram is showing in the one bridge. So I wanted to point that out because, I'm going to sound like a salesman for FORA, but the fact is this, that darn switcher has so much built into it in functionality. One of the things that Bob Peterson, one of your US engineers, has done is activated all the frame syncs within the switcher as well. Now, we tend to shy away from frame syncs in general because there's an inherent latency that is attributed to them. But in this case, I've been able to use them in certain situations and nobody can tell they're active, but it has saved the day in a heartbeat when something is for some reason not in sync, and I can activate the frame sync quickly off the touch screen, and then my signal is got integrity again. It's a very cool switcher.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I'll let you go back.
No, thank you very much. And then also one point I think Dan mentioned during the video is he looking for the size of the router on the switcher, and he has now 144 or 64 by 48. One of the dilemma on the manufacturer side is how to make a much smaller size of the router on the switcher on the 12G. And then frankly speaking, very easy to build the router switcher by using quad crosspoint in the system. Get the 12G in, but separate for the 3G to crosspoint and the switching to output. Frankly speaking, that is much easier to make a design for the router. But the trade-off is that's gonna eat a lot of space, a lot of heat, a lot of energy, and then some potential risk of the syncing together with 4 such pass things. So by using that technology, it's gonna be very difficult to make router switches smaller. But another dilemma is 12G is still new, so there are not so many matured 12G chipset is available from device company. That device sometimes cause some issues still, it's not mature yet. So that's a big dilemma of the manufacturer, but we try to come up with the right solution and not, against such not mature devices, but try to make its size small by not using a 3G quad. We try to get more smarter way to make it product small to meet the customer requirement. So you better ask or you better talk to your partner or manufacturer integrator what's going to be the system, what is most important for you, and pick up the right tool. So that's going to be the recommendation. Because I'm not the sales guy of FOA today, so I just give you the broad idea. It's totally up to your decision, but Dan is a guy who has already experience, so that's one of the good benchmark. I think you can talk to him.
Absolutely. And that's something I mentioned on the video. I didn't know I'd be here today, so I'm glad I had the opportunity, and thank you. But being who we are at New World, being an educational institution, our CEO has always been big on sharing technology and sharing what we do. So there's no situation that we get into any kind of NDA or anything. When somebody needs help, they're more than welcome to ask. They can ask how we overcame something with this technology. Our audio is the same as our video in the sense that it's, the CEO, Howard Herring, pushes us to go as far as we possibly can with technology. Believe it or not, they've already asked me, it's like, can we do 8K? I'm like, oh no, please. Unless you have $1 million per camera, please. Yeah, I guess we could do quad link 12G to pull the 48G we need. But then again, we reduce everything by a quarter. I did want to mention you had briefly elaborated on GearLink, and it was in the drawing, but you had said tally and source name. One of the things that we have had in the past was the ability to, of course, carry UMD information and tally from one source to another without a lot of complicated interfaces and GPIO breakouts. And I mean, anybody that does this type of work is I'm preaching to the choir. But what we found is Bob and FORA had a solution for us, which was just a simple device that goes in the system, and it basically tells everything, who you are and what you're doing all the time. And based on a former job, I was with KOB in Albuquerque. We also ran the Reels channel, and I didn't design that system. I was relatively new, and it had its own version of GearLink for a different manufacturer, but nobody knew about it. None of the engineers, and I was new, and it failed. And that froze NBC on the air for 30 minutes. So wow. Learning from that lesson, which we all do, when I put in GearLink in our system, there's a secondary GearLink sitting there offline but active, always updated. So should anything ever fail, and it's inherent to every manufacturer, at some point equipment fails, we just all know it, there's a secondary ready to take its place. So I thought I'd throw that in real quick too.
Oh, thank you, Dan. Actually, this red color, I said the control is a GearLink, as you said. And then one of the things I learned is not only the GearLink, everything got to be redundant. So power or CPU, or if you have a web control, so the Ethernet should be, or as you said, like a GearLink, or maybe Tally Manager, all sort of stuff. It has to be redundant somehow to back up to change quickly. That's for sure. Yes, Dan, that's a key point.
And it's very fortunate too. The FORA system is actually intuitive enough that it's told me before if something has happened. Oh, the one thing I can say is the actual power cords, we went with a different, shorter pre-made power cord from a different manufacturer. They didn't quite fit right, I think, on the back connector, the back plane, and any vibration would loosen them. So I was getting an alarm, and that was a physical issue with the pigtails we bought. And we're running everything at 208 instead of 120 because of the amount of amperage and everything else we were dealing with at the time. We figured that was a better way for us to run our system, and it actually has worked out real well. That was thanks to Kent Green, who actually helped me on the first layer of the design. This design, by the way, went through 3 different companies, Kent Green, Diversified, and then Enlightened Digital. So we actually had 3 different companies at one point working with us through different processes to make this happen. But it took 3 years. New World was literally pushing for this to happen in 2017. But the technology wasn't there. And I told Howard, our CEO, you know, the answer is going to be 12G, but nobody. I went to everybody, and it's like, oh, we make this product, and this company makes this product. But it was Enlighten Digital that actually said, you know, you got to look at FORA. And the truth is, in 1977, 78, when I was that skinny little kid behind the camera and I worked in the TV studio, we had, you know, I think it was 79, we had a little FORA TBC, and I hadn't seen FORA since then. And so when he said FORA, I'm like, don't they make TBCs? He's like, oh man, you got to check them out. I'm like, no, really? And so we did the trip to Tokyo to meet the CEO of FORA and everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, to see the factory and the technology. And one of the things I had mentioned to you was, in the United States, our marketing is so given to certain manufacturers, and I'll leave them out by name because it's not fair to them, but they're very, very good with marketing, and FORA is not into marketing. I think they put all their money into research. But you know, when I saw the different things, I was like, okay, this is finally the answer. And you know, one manufacturer doesn't always have all the right answers, but in this case, the development was so in tune with itself that it really helped out. So I thought I'd throw that little bit of information in. I know you didn't ask for it, but it's free, no charge.
Thank you, Dan. So at the very beginning, Dan clearly mentioned to everybody, this is not a session to scare you about 12G, okay, 12G. A lot good things there. That's why we go through this severe test. So Dan, you mentioned about one of the gifts you got, like I don't want to call it a down converted. It's gonna be super sampling or over sampling of 4K to the HD quality is good, right?
It's amazing. And I did mention that I was at WHIZ in Zanesville, and we had just gotten the HD stuff, and we just started to integrate SDI, and we started doing our productions in HD and then down converting them, and everybody was like, oh, is this HD? It's like, no, it's standard def, but it was recorded in HD. It had better color symmetry, everything about it was just better, the clarity. And so what we've found is the people from PBS Minnesota who produced the Susie Orman special, David Wormuth and that group, they were incredible. And they provided such good feedback. And I know I'm biased. The first thing is, like, you know, your own kid is the best, smartest kid that's ever been born. And so I know I'm biased when I talk about the system at New World. And there was a lot of blood, sweat, and a little bit of tear into that. But what I can say is, when we produced the Momento Latino with Funny or Die Productions, you know, there was a lot of concern. It's like, you know, this isn't a Sony camera. And it's like, no, it's a Hitachi camera. Believe me, it's every bit as good. No, it's not a Sony camera. It's like, it will look good, believe me. And that's good for your old company. And Sony produces a great camera. Nobody's going to doubt that, for sure. But you know, they weren't used to seeing the same technology. I mean, we can all list manufacturers we know are very common in our production facilities, and my old ones as well. So 4A is not necessarily the first thought in a broadcast facility. So the people that came in from the big production house, the big production company, were like, this isn't what we think it should be. And it's like, just wait till you see the quality, wait till your editors get the footage. And they're concerned it was UHD, it's going to be big, it's going to be massive. Okay, I will grant you that. It's whatever you're doing in HD times 4, because that's what UHD is, HD times 4. And 8K is even worse, or even better. So the size of it is bigger as well. So once they took the file, they converted it to HD. They had much more information to work with. Everything looked more brilliant. And when I actually watched the playback on CBS that night, when they were cutting between the different cutaways and the different locations, we had Pitbull and Gloria Estefan in New World were two of the performers, and it just popped off the screen. I was like, this is so cool.
Thank you very much. So looks like Bob would like me to finish the thing soon, maybe, but
I was going to ask you if you're ready to take some questions from the audience.
Okay, then this just a summary page is, so again, 4K 12G system is the best solution today, And the cabling gonna be much simpler. It's a one single cable, and as he said, like oversampling 4K gonna give you much better picture quality, not only 4K but HD. Just 8 times bigger data, so certain checkpoint exists, but once you go through the checkpoint, you're gonna enjoy the beautiful 4K, beautiful presentation, beautiful HD. So we really would like to elevate your story up together. So thank you very much, everybody. All right, back to
Thank you.
Baker.
Oh, thank you so much. That was incredible. For anybody that was at my NAB presentation several years ago, I made a prediction before NAB that you're going to start seeing actual 12G SDI products, and it wasn't all going to be fiber. And I went to the show, and sure enough, there was a router, and there was a switch, and there was a camera, and and everything else. And now to see what you've built with this standard is just incredible. And it's great hearing the challenges that go with that. If anybody has a question, please post it on the GoToWebinar interface. And I'm going to start off with 2 questions for you, Dan. The first one is patch panels. As you mentioned earlier, now we're talking about if you're doing 60, almost a 6 gigahertz RF type of signal. And I was curious. At first, there was only non-normal patch panels, and then they came out with normal patch panels. Here again, who would ever thought we'd be running these type of signals through a normal patch panel? So how did that go for you? Everything's working well?
Yes, the one thing I did, there was a couple things we did with the design is to future-proof it, and that's how I look at 4K. 4K is future-proof. With ATSC 3.0 coming out for broadcasters, it's extremely likely they're going to be doing 1080p as opposed to 1080i. And 1080p with HDR is going to be an enormous breakthrough for visual, for television and broadcast television without eating up bandwidth. If they're able to produce in 4K and do the conversion to 1080i or use 4K equipment, they're going to have better color quality. When it came to the patch bays, we were sure to do 12G on everything. Even when we were doing an HD patch bay for HD monitoring, I said, we're not putting in any 3G cable, any 3G connectors. Of course, as James from Cox Communications in Atlanta told me years ago, he was so cool. I worked for Cox Cable Red. He said, if I walk into a facility and I see a barrel in your facility, you're fired. And I thought, oh, that's ridiculous. But later on, I learned that was just a good practice. So everything we do is done in 12G, every connector, every cable, every patch bay, to future-proof and also to avoid that potential of accidentally getting the wrong thing in line, because your biggest thing, which Satoshi-san pointed out, is that eye pattern. That eye pattern is your make or break. That's your positive test results that you want to see. And as he mentioned on, which I've always said is he calls it the cleaning up the eye pattern. One of the things I learned a long time ago is if you ever let that eye pattern degrade to the point where you have to clean it up, that's too late. You have to do it while the integrity is still there. I ran within manufacturer specs, 9-story drop of RG6 for 3G, and the signal integrity was just barely there, and I had a picture, but and then I ended up trying reclocking DAs and everything else, but once every 2 or 3 minutes, boom, the picture would lock and unlock, and putting a DA at the top didn't help, putting a DA at the bottom, and we had to switch everything over to fiber. And that's why I mentioned with cable manufacturers, they're very, very, very generous on the number they give you for distance. So those are just a few of the things that are related to 12G worth mentioning.
That's great. My second question is can you touch base on, I know there's some manufacturers out there that use a term gearboxing, and on their routers, they're not actually doing 12G SDI, they're actually doing quad. Something you looked at?
Yeah, we looked at quad. There's a manufacturer, I really love their equipment. And they make an incredible switcher and everything else. And when I looked at that, they're like, yep, we can do it. Here's what we're doing. We're strapping the 4. And every time a manufacturer said strapping 4, the automatic thing is whatever they're telling you, it's 25% of what they're doing. It's like somebody telling you, hey, you want $1,000 and they hand you 250, and it's like, where's the other? And they say, well, it was 1,000 quarters. What we meant is 1,000 quarters. No, I want $1,000, not 1,000 quarters. So it's one of the things I learned. So there are some different routers that have some new features in them. The one thing I had to find out in every bit of research, I mean, I overdid research to minimize the amount of errors on the output on the final solution. And there were still some because, in some places I thought, well, let's not DA it here, let's not patch it here. And I got together with FORA at the end of our first season and said, here's where I think I made mistakes on the design, and then the people that helped me out too, but more my fault because ultimately we're responsible for what we do. And I said, I need to change this to patch points. I need this system to be less complex. And in this case, Bob Peterson of FORA came in and said, let me help you out with that. And then he's also working with the integrator that I use because my department right now is just me. We're hiring an assistant engineer, by the way, if anybody's looking. So so I have to count on, in this case, Enlighten to help me out with some of the wiring. So Bob's doing the design, working with me. We're passing it to Enlighten to do the wiring. But our entire, as Satoshi said, our entire control room floor is up and gone. We're having the structure done over because we have 6 4K laser projectors being installed under the floor. We have 14 4K 40,000 lumen laser Christies with a color gamut that actually allows you to reproduce the 4K in beautiful quality. So we're 12Ging everything in that case. We're doing 12G over fiber. And then the other trick, which I can mention for people here doing 12G, is DisplayPort, HDMI 2, and 12G. 3 very distinctly different versions of the same thing. And don't assume there's a product to get you from point A to point C without jumping through another point. By that I mean DisplayPort in 4K or ultra high def does not translate to an instant 12G without a couple conversions. And those are all painful things, but it's because 4K is just almost to the ready for prime time players part. I mean, it's there, but there's just a few little pieces missing, and manufacturers are going to see that and catch up quickly.
So Dan sent in a question. Did you monitor the eye patterns a lot as you were installing the cable?
In this case, FORA, this was important enough to FORA too. They sent 3 engineers from Japan. They sent Kensuke-san and Bob Peterson from the US. So and I have to say this, we didn't tell them to do that. We didn't ask them to do it. It was important enough to them. They had just completed doing Fuji TV in Tokyo, which I went and saw. Beautiful facility. Oh my gosh, it's a show place. NHK at the same time that Fuji TV was deciding it was going 24 hours with 4K ultra high def January 1st of that year. The NHK actually debuted the first 8K broadcast of 2001: A Space Odyssey from a 70 millimeter transfer. So in this case, the people from FORA said, you know what, we know the technology is all new to the people in the United States that are going to be installing it. You have a good integrator, but we're going to send our team over as well. And the earliest designs on all the routers, I did a lot of research on routers. One manufacturer's router in New York and LA, they gave it as a reference, and I called LA and they said, oh, it works like a champ. I'm like, oh, great, you're using all 160 inputs and outputs? And they said, yeah, but we're doing it in HD. It's like, well, that doesn't quite do the same thing. And then I called the New York production house and they said, yeah, we have this other router. And I said, is it working? It's like, nah, it doesn't work. It doesn't pass. So it was only after truly seeing that the FORA router was working at Fuji TV that I said, okay, this is a good working solution. And it was FORA who said, the routers require, which I'd never heard of before, tuning. So they wanted their engineers here with the scopes, the eye pattern tests, and that's how we did so much of the work initially. But that was 2.5 years ago, Bob, 3 years ago. And so now it's just like second nature. The one thing I would mention, Bob, is some manufacturers are claiming ultra high def, and they're doing it under, I want to be very politically correct in the terminology. They're doing it under an, let's say what it is, shady situation. You cannot produce what we consider to be a 12G quality UHD under conditions less than 12G when you're doing half as much in a bit rate. Now, engineers with lab coats may want to differ, but from a user standpoint and everything else, it's like a WAV file in audio versus MP3. Can you hear it? Absolutely. Can you see something that looks UHD? Yeah, but is it full of anomalies? It's going to be, because there's a compromise for that bandwidth for compressing it. And even 12G is, it's still its own compression to begin with. It's not as big as it could be. So I'm sorry I went a lot long on that answer for you.
Oh, it's okay. So just so you know, I got a comment, it came in that said the Panasonic 150 can output 3G and 12G at the same time.
I should have elaborated on that. Our 150 cameras are in remote locations, and so because of the limited fiber, we were only able to do it that way. I can say with my designs at the San Francisco Symphony and Cleveland, I now started using multi-dyne, if you're not familiar with that. Yep. Boy, I sound like one giant commercial. And chiclets are delicious. No, the multi-dyne allows the multiplexing, but at the time we had different fiber gear installed. So that is a good point.
Great. Well, that's all the questions I have. How about any last words, Satoshi and Dan? Anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah, I'll add this again. New World should be back to a normal season. Thank goodness we see kind of the end of COVID, and all of us are ready for that. So we're back to a regular production season. So things should be semi-normal. If anybody ever wants to come visit, we're NWS, newworldsymphony.edu. You can look us up and reach out to us. We're on Miami Beach. So if you're in a cold state, like I grew up in Ohio, plan to come down in the middle of winter because it's going to be nice automatically. So that's what I would say. And I will add, thank you to Mario and Bob and everybody at Satoshi, everybody at FORA. This project couldn't have been done if the company hadn't been aggressive on the product manufacturing. And also just to be there to help out, because it's as I said, there were 3 different people, 3 different groups involved with just getting us to the point to launch. So it wasn't easy, but was it worth it? Absolutely.
Well, thanks for sharing your great video and all the behind the scenes. This was really, really great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I don't want to take credit for the video, by the way. I was just standing there with a shotgun. Somebody else recorded it. Bob recorded it, so I'm not sure who edited it, but I appreciate that.
Yeah, Kensuke Sakamoto shot the video for you, and it was edited out in Cyprus by Sunboy. Yep.
Kensuke,
and critiqued by Satoshi-san.
Yeah, next time we're going to use 8K camera for you. Don't worry.
Yeah, and then are you going to upgrade my Hanabi? Is it 8K capable yet?
Not 16K. Okay. Anyway, just one word from myself is thank you very much, Dan. By the way, thank you for joining us and then review everything you learned. And then Mr. Bob Baker, thank you for having this opportunity. And we just talk about all the spec and the numbers or everything. That everybody can work with, but the experience and the know-how is totally different level. So thank you very much for Dan. Actually, Dan and the New World Symphony pushing us to go to the next level, but those is very difficult to describe on a PowerPoint or spec sheet. If you can compare all the spec, you can easily see same or different, but all the know-how, all the devil is in the detail. So all the know-how learning is pretty much important. So as a FOA, very much open to come to talk to us. We're happy to talk about our experience, no matter what manufacturer, no matter nothing for the industry. And of course, Dan, as he said, we both happy to contribute to the industry anyway. So that's my last.
And I can add one more thing. I'm glad you mentioned this. Both Kensuke and Bob, I'm well versed on ROS switchers, which I like. I'm versed on grass switchers, which I like too. No doubt about it. So every now and then, as an engineer, unfortunately, I also have to play TD. It's part of multitasking, and I can call Bob up anytime, and he almost always answers the phone immediately, and it's always Bob. And it's like, Bob, I'm trying to get this quad effect. I'm doing something wrong. It just won't position. He's like, oh, okay, FaceTime me. Okay, aim it. Oh, just press that button over there on the right. Yeah, the second one. I'm like, oh, thanks, man. So, you know, I have to say this for Bob hosting. You know, I've worked with a lot of manufacturers, like most of us in our career, and some of them, you know, the first thing they say is, okay, what's your account number? What is your credit card number? Never have I been asked that. And I stopped doing business with one company that was like, oh, they were nickel and diming us to death. This was in Albuquerque. But I can honestly say that you know, when it came to Bob, call him up. It's like, you know, Bob, I'm wearing blue shirt today. What color socks should I wear? Green. It's that good. Almost.
Well, thanks. Thanks for everybody that joined. I was going to mention, it was great to see some people from way outside the Atlanta area, like Paul Seiden, and actually Bob Seidel was on earlier. He just dropped from he used to work at CBS. And anyway, so and also I was going to mention Alex Dave, a good friend of mine. So it's great to see people from all over the country joining. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. We will post the video and the PowerPoint PDF on the SMPTE Atlanta website. You know, probably be 1 or 2 days. So, thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, Bob. Nice meeting you.
Thank you.
All right,
Come talk to us.
Great night.
Take care, everybody.